Hey, what's up, everybody? Cheyenne Perry here with the Lean In podcast, where everyone has a story to tell. It's time to lean in, listen, and learn from the stories that are shared. Let's get it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Cheyenne Perry here with the Lean In podcast. Today, we have a special guest. Some people call him a friend, coach, a teacher, a husband, a father, so much more. But today we have Mr. Dave LeVasseur on the podcast with us. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Been looking forward to this conversation and connecting together on this podcast.
Yeah, me too.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Yes, sir. Dave, I want to start off here with first question here. So, when you look back in your life, what experiences have most shaped who you are today?
That's
Big question.
yeah, it's a big one. I'm 55 years old, so there's been a lot of shaping. For me, it's been most of my later life is where, all the growth took place, where I'm at and what I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think that a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in or I'm trying to gravitate to is shaped by early years, but it's my later in life stuff. I think who I am right now has a lot to do with obviously growing up. Everybody, you're made up of an amalgam of your decisions. And I grew up kind of an only child, even though I have 5 siblings, because my next oldest was way older than me. I had a single parent. My father passed away when I was very young, like 2-ish, and I had quite a bit of struggle. So there's a lot to be said for having to struggle early on in life, and I think that struggle was good. And unfortunately, my struggle wasn't relegated just to being a little kid. And by struggle, let me clarify.
Sure.
Struggle to me is not necessarily not having money or not having stuff. Struggle is not developing. And, when you're not developing and growing, you're struggling. And that's where I was at. Most little kids all the way up through, adolescence and high school, they struggle for the most part just by nature. But, I didn't really mature until I was way later in life. Really, ultimately, what did it for me was, meeting my wife. I think a lot of guys say that, their wife did it for them. But honestly, she literally did save me personally. And I would say probably, ending up, marrying Nicole and having a family is really kind of what shaped me, because I was very irresponsible. I think a lot of guys could probably say that. I just carried mine on a little bit too far into life.
Yeah. Going in back a bit deeper to your story there. Can you share a little bit of your testimony? How did God reveal Himself to you?
Again, later in life, I grew up as we weren't very religious. I hate using that term, but our family didn't really practice a whole lot of faith. I was a Catholic. Our family was Catholic when I was younger. I didn't understand stuff. I still don't. The whole Catholic thing. I know, no offense to anybody. I don't understand a lot of the stuff, and it didn't line up for me, and so I didn't really. It wasn't my thing. And, my wife was. And when I met her, she was kind of like, she's not she doesn't insist on a lot of things, but she was very adamant about, hey, we got to get into a church and things like that. And fortunately for me, God got me to her, because I did not make good decisions when I was young prior to her. Just dumb stuff, nothing awful. It's not like I was in jail or anything like that, but just not creating myself for the future, playing a long game. Meeting her was a big deal. It kind of dawned on me once I had a family, and especially kids. I got to get my stuff together, man. And, I really honestly feel like I had guardian angels. God was right there the whole entire time when I was young, before I met her, keeping me away from the real dangers in life. And so once I got to her, my family was the real reason why I was like, hey, faith is a big deal. I got to have these. And my kids aren't just going to naturally get it. Like, I'm responsible for that. And I had no idea until that point that, like, that's on me to make sure whenever I speak or when I try to influence them, there has to be some component. They have to see me practicing it, and I have to speak it to them that, you know, we're on this planet to serve God. This is ultimately really what our objective is, you know, and all the things we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of marriage, how did you and your wife meet?
Geez. Yeah. So I love telling the story because it makes me sound like I'm a stud, but it wasn't really like that. It was kind of strange because so I was living in Bay City, as was my wife, and she was working at a credit union at the time, and I was a teacher. I was like a first year teacher, and I would see her at the credit union, and I was like, hey, you know, she's attractive, and
Yeah.
you know, just naturally she's attractive. Obviously never, you know, said or did anything. And one day I finally just I decided like you know, I'm gonna ask this girl out. So I walked up, and because like I told you, I was a completely irresponsible idiot. I was paying bills with like money orders. You know, I didn't have a checking account. And asked her, I said, could I need this, whatever it was, checking orders. I need this one, and your phone number. and and she handed it over. But the funny part of that was about I have an older sister that's much older than me. She's always looking out for me, and so Nicole and I kind of went out on a couple dates. I saw my sister, and she didn't know anything about it. And she said to me, she's like, "Hey, I know this girl. I think I want to hook you up with her." And I'm like, I said, yeah, I don't know, whatever, you know. Well, it turned out it actually was Nicole.
Wow.
Because my sister went into the same credit union, and she actually asked Nicole if, you know, would you like to go out on a date with my brother? And
Wow.
we'd already been out on a couple dates, and she actually was like, well, I think I'm kind of seeing someone, which was me. So yeah. So it was
That's
pretty
awesome.
smooth
Yeah.
transition into a relationship. So
That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's a cool story. It's always fun to hear how couples met and what that what the story was like. So and still
yeah.
going. I want to veer into your coaching lane. So you've been coaching football for a while. Talk to us about what inspired you to pursue coaching football at a high school level. How'd you end up getting a job at Lakers?
Well, so I didn't really. I actually, when I got a lot of people think that when you're, you know, in high school and you play sports and all, you know, coaches get inspired there, and I really, I was, but for me, it was a family thing when I was in high school. So like I said, all my siblings really kind of were done and gone way before, you know, I was in that time, and I was just at home, just me. And that was kind of my family. And, you know, you'd think that that would be like, wow, that inspired me. But really, honestly, I didn't. I actually played for 3 Hall of Fame coaches in basketball, football, and baseball.
Wow.
But looking back at it now, you know, and I just started realizing this recently, is that they weren't very good coaches, you know, and nothing, not trying to impugn them individually, but I look at what I call successful coaching, and they didn't really do that. They weren't creating relationships. They weren't trying to build young men. They were trying to win games and whatever, you know, I mean, do your thing. But that wasn't what did it for me. Really, kind of what did it for me was access to exposure, I should say, to athletics when I was in college. So I didn't go back to school till I was a little bit older. I think I was like 24. And I was studying sports medicine, and I ran track at Saginaw Valley, and I
Okay.
was around athletics. I worked with football, baseball, you know, basketball, all kinds of sports, and my internship for sports medicine, and being around those sports, I saw that structure that, you know, I really kind of gravitate to. And once I got out of school, I kind of got that sports medicine background, and I went into sports medicine, and it just really wasn't where I wanted to be. It didn't kind of scratch that itch. And I eventually went back and got my teaching certification because I was like, hey, I want to try to coach. Once I got my teaching certification, I realized I'm not a coach. Like, I really hadn't had a whole lot of coaching experience. I couldn't get a job coaching at the first school I was at. I coached some stuff. I coached a little track and some freshman boys basketball and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get into football at the school I was teaching, so I kept with the sports medicine, and I was actually exposed to a lot of different coaches, coaching styles, formats, venues,
Mm-hmm.
sports, everything. I actually worked out in Baltimore for the Ravens for a while. I worked for some different
Nice.
high schools, worked for different places, and saw a lot of different stuff that I was like, just that exposure and that
Mm-hmm.
time that I spent kind of was, gave me that desire to get into the coaching. And I eventually got kind of a break and got in, did a little bit of experience coaching. It wasn't really super impactful because I didn't learn much, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually got in and was at Garber as an assistant, was at Freeland as an assistant. And then I eventually went on to get a head coaching job in Oscoda, and then went to Pinconning, and then ended up here at Laker.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of moved all over the place from Tri Cities to the east side of Michigan
Yeah.
and end up in now in the thumb.
Yes, and my wife is very acutely aware of how many times we've moved as well too. So, and I don't blame her. It's been a lot.
Right.
It's been a lot.
Yeah. I can only imagine that so.
Yeah.
You coach and you teach at Lakers. What keeps you motivated to stay in it, to stay in the grind of keep coaching young men and teaching young adults?
There's really, I mean, to me, there's nothing more important. So when you get your people, and you know this, coach, when you get your people, those are your people, and you want to do everything you can for them. I've had a lot of people reach out to me on different occasions when jobs open up in the area, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're going to apply for that job?" I'm like, why would I ever in a million years want to apply for a job anywhere? I'm literally at the best place I could. I'm at the top end of where I'd want to be in terms of what I desire for myself
Mm-hmm.
and my family. And there's absolutely nothing. You'd have to tear me away from being here, because I got my people, and
Yeah.
I got my place. And I honestly feel like God put me in a position to be here, placed me here for a reason.
Mm.
I don't claim to have all kinds of skill sets and be special at any particular thing, but I do know that I'm special at what I'm supposed to do and where I'm supposed to
Mm.
be. And these are my people, and that goes for the entire community.
Yeah.
All of the individuals in this thumb area, all the people in this thumb area that I work with are fantastic. And it makes you want to work hard at your job, makes you want to do the things that you have to do the best of your ability,
Mm-hmm.
and just not try to crash out in the process, because it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough.
That's good. Yeah. 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 And you've done a good job. I've heard
Well,
good
thank you.
things over there at Lakers and yeah, done a good job over there at Laker Country.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, when you think about your role as a teacher and how does that influence your coaching style and then vice versa?
So I teach freshman focus at Laker. I've taught just about everything and I also teach the weightlifting class as well too.
Okay.
I've done everything from, you know, chemistry and health and PE and biology, anatomy and physiology. I've done it all. But so it's, to me, this freshman focus class is perfect. I love it because
Hmm.
I do a lot of uh, life skill learning in that class, and a lot of it translates. I don't want to say translates, but it's very closely related to coaching stuff. And
Yeah.
for the most part, I know it sounds goofy. Well, first off, having access to kids and being in high school is a really big deal, and
Hmm.
being able to have contact with them regularly is a big deal. The other big deal is the fact that all of my kids attended. Obviously, my girls are in college now. Well, not obviously, but my girls are in college now.
Hmm.
My son's still there. Uh, Nicole works there, so having everybody there makes it pretty easy.
Yeah.
Having access to the kids and your family is a bonus. going back to what I was saying, it sounds kind of goofy, but having a freshman focus class where I can teach life skills along with some health, things of that nature. I also drop in something that's kind of important to me, and I feel like it's getting away from us as a society, is our Constitution and how our rights and how you as a human in this country constitutionally should be able to function, and knowing how your rights and where you stand as an American, how that impacts all the parts of your life, because we're getting away from our rights. And I think and that goes back to something that's very big to me, and the reason why I'm very big into constitutional rights is because our founding fathers, who I carry no tremendous love, or I don't fanboy them because everybody's got their things, but they created a country that was founded on God, that was based on God and the principles, biblical principles. And it was for a reason. It wasn't because, they just came here because they were trying to escape religious persecution and created, a country based on the religion. I don't feel that way at all. Rather, what I feel is religion, particularly Christianity, for obvious reasons, that's, I'm a Christian, is based on, or actually is the foundation for society, because morals are a result of our morality is based on religion. So put it this way: if we try to conduct ourselves based just on our own feelings and thoughts and desires, we're going to get absolute mayhem, and people are going to do, people are going to do anything they want and justify it by saying, well, that's my desire. So what has to happen is God replaces that void and says, this is where morality comes from. And I guess maybe I started off by saying religion, but really it should be God. God replaces where that, that individuality, if you're basing your decisions on that, you're going to fall short. When you base your decisions on, what's God's expectations, then what you're going to get is you're going to get a very strong, solid foundation. And now, our country being based on that, and the Constitution based on that, obviously your rights are given to you by God, and you base a country on that. For me, I feel like, we don't teach our kids enough to understand that concept and how to rely on that system of constitutionality and God. But, I kind of went way off in the weeds in that, but
you're good.
I also kind of throw in there too. I teach the young men, obviously, and women in that class. I try to keep it, I don't go really crazy with political and cultural stuff, but I try to definitely lay out the idea of the roles of men and women. And by roles, I don't mean the wife has to cook and, the guy has to go, take out the garbage. But rather the idea that, men have roles and women have roles. And the translation from the classroom to the coaching is that I try to, always teach our guys that, even if I don't always say it this way, that, for the most part, there's an expectation in you. And the concept that I try to always base it on is that you should be an absolute savage, uncivilized, a monster capable of the most fierce and barbaric things. And the difference between heroes and villains is their ability to control it. So if you can get a community full of young men who are learning to be heroes through the capability of being an absolute savage when necessary, you have a good foundation of men in your community. And I think that's where it starts.
That's good. Yeah. That's some good stuff to chew on. So that's awesome. I want to touch on faith still. So how does your faith shape the way you lead, you live, and serve your young people, both in classroom and on the field with your young men?
Well, it's very hard. So we have a concept that I use a lot with our coaching, and it's called juice. And I tell our guys, you have to have juice. And what I mean by that is, so as an example, if you have a kid on your team, if you're a part of a team and you try to tell another player, a teammate, hey, you need to get in the weight room, or you need to get, you need to hustle more, or you need whatever. And you're not getting in the weight room and you're not hustling more, you don't have any juice. You're going to get laughed at. Nobody's going to listen to you. But if you are doing everything in your capability, everything in your power to do what you're expected to do as a member of that group, in this particular case, our team, and then you call somebody out, you got the juice to be able to do that. And, that's where the leadership part starts. For me personally, I don't think that I can ask our guys particularly when it comes to the faith perspective of it, I can't ask them to think a certain way, feel a certain way, act a certain way, whatever it may be, unless I got juice. So, it's a lot of pressure and it's tough, but I have to make sure that I'm impeccable with what I'm doing. Now, obviously, I'm not always. So the humility part of it is a big deal, but I have to walk the talk for the most part. You know how it is. If you go out there and you're a clown, you're not gonna last.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Walk the walk and talk the talk. I like that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
so. And when it comes to faith, we have. So I try to integrate it as much as possible, and it's tough. When you're in a public school system. Fortunately, where we're at, we have a very good Christian foundation, and that most of the people that I deal with are very, strongly rooted in Christian faith. A lot of them, and an overwhelming majority of them they're very friendly to having Christian principles injected into their lives. And so we pray before we train, we pray before we practice, pray before we play. I try to always make sure I'm somehow integrating, belief and faith in Christ and, general Christian principles into what we do, not as a sidebar or a decoration, but this is how we function.
That's good.
On Christian principles,
That's good. Yeah. I coach, as you already know, I coach girls basketball over at Bad X, and it was pretty cool. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Our team decided to pray before the game, and they've been doing it the last 3 games now. So in the last couple of weeks, and nothing I initiated, but for them to take ownership and do it themselves as a team has been really cool to see. And so I love that you shared about you guys. That's just part of your DNA. You just faith and prayer and things. Your body language and the way you conduct yourselves is just trying to be Christ-like. And so that's really, really admirable that you guys do that. So
and maybe I'm about to start. You kind of made me think a little bit there. Maybe I should start having our guys lead prayer. I never really thought of that. I've always been. So I'm a anxious prayer. I want, and it, not because of not feeling comfortable doing it, but because I always have. And as a coach, you always got 25 irons in the fire, and things are always going on. And everything's running a mile a minute. And so I always feel like, okay, what am I forgetting to say here? I got to say this. I got to say that. So I oftentimes get accused of being very long-winded at things. And sometimes the prayers get a little bit stringy. Anyhow, so I think that might be my next step, is have someone lead prayer for us. That's a good idea.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So going into touching a little bit on leadership, how has coaching taught you more about leadership and just people in general?
So I had kind of I don't want to say wake up call. So I learned something about people early as a head coach that it was not necessarily a good thing. And I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing either. It's something you just got to adapt to as a coach. And that is, I left a program that I was very close with when I was in Oscoda. And when I left, I found out that a really close relationship that I thought I had with all these people. Like I thought, these are my people. Like I said, it was conditional. It was conditional in that I had something to provide for them, we did a really good job turning that program around as a coaching staff. The program was not very good. We got there, and initially we were not very good while I was there, but we eventually built it to a playoff program.
Nice.
And obviously everybody was happy, and I had an opportunity to leave, and I left. And when I did so, I found out very quickly how many people were not my people. So,
yeah.
And the only thing that it really, to me, looking back on it, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's hurtful, because you do that to yourself. Those people aren't hurting you. You're letting the circumstances hurt you.
Right.
So I really kind of, I don't blame anybody or anything like that. There's not really a blame component to it, but I allow that to happen to me. And I realized that, what you do, you have a lot of influence in what you do. So as coaches, we influence what makes kids satisfied. Their satisfaction is based on your ultimate decision about something. In reality, their work and effort and attitude and everything culminated into your decision. So, but either way, you have that influence. And if it doesn't go a person's way, sometimes they're not going to be a big fan of you, but they're definitely sometimes, they're not going to always tell you, which makes it the conditional situation. And when it's convenient and easy, and when you no longer have that influence, then all of a sudden you're on the outs with them personally, from a personal perspective. It's like, man, it sucks, because I didn't want anything except for just to do the best job I could for you. And then I find out this was all based on what you could get, it's part of the job. I learned that about people, and when it comes to the leadership thing, it's all about investment. With young people, it's hard to get them away from the mindset of being concerned with anything but themselves. Even the best of the best of them. That goes for adults too, for the most part. But, trying to teach them the investment part of it, meaning you have to invest, not money, not things, you have to invest your efforts, your love, your commitment, your sacrifice. You have to invest into not necessarily the program, but the other people that are involved with the program.
Right.
And getting not only getting kids to do that as a coach, but getting other kids to do that to one another. I learned that if you can get everybody to buy in and invest, not for the win, but for the experience,
That's good.
Leadership it's tough. It's tough. It's not just telling people what to do, man.
Right. Yeah. I love the famous quote from Craig Rochelle. He says, leadership is influence. So I just stick to that. It's so important to keep.
And what is influence, really? I mean, influence is just that juice that I was talking about. And if you don't put something into it, you don't have juice. You ain't influencing anybody, man. I don't care how hard you try. Ain't gonna happen.
That's right.
You might be able to tell them what to do, but you're not going to have any influence over their will in any way.
Yep. You're right. So you turn programs around. I'm curious, how do you help athletes, particularly when they experience a lot of losses or even setbacks? So how do you help them have a mind shift to stay in the game, right? To not give up, lose hope when they're dealing with setbacks or losses or even injuries.
Yeah, so it goes back to that investment part, and it's very hard because when you're trying to teach kids about that investment, you want to try to will them to understand that they got to put a lot into the program. They got to put a lot into the people around them. They have to work really, really, really hard in order to get whatever goal we set. So if we say we want to win a conference championship, or we say we want to win a state championship, or we want to go undefeated, or whatever it may be, you have to ask them to sacrifice, invest, and work really hard for months and months and months leading up to that with no guarantee. It's not like you can say to them, hey, I got a crystal ball here, and it says to me that if you come to the weight room every day and you take care of your teammates and you get A's and you're a model kid in the classroom, you're going to win a state championship. There's no guarantee. So ultimately what's going to happen is, in a game of football, which is different than basketball. We have 8 divisions. There's only going to be 8 teams at the end of the year that can say that they got to that point. We're always going to lose the last game of the year unless we're one of those 8 teams. We're always going to lose the last game of the year. So I don't care who you are, with a handful of teams, aside from a handful of teams, you better anticipate that losing component. And that losing part of it is a really, really, really big deal. It's the greatest teacher there is. Losing is, there's so many cliche, and that's why you get so many quotes. What is, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up, or you never really lose, you just run out of time. So there's so many great quotes that come from losing because it is a fantastic teacher. When it comes to, to learning from this stuff, it's not just the losing. Like you said, it could be injury, it could be failure, whatever it is. But, for example, Ben, my son, he plays quarterback for us. And, week 3 this year in the game against Cass City, he tore the UCL ligament in his he plays quarterback, and he tore the UCL ligament in his thumb and broke it in his throwing hand. And, he tried to play with it. He played, I think he played like 4 more games or something like that, 5 more games. And we had to shut his season down. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to deal with a whole lot with him because I've tried to prep him over the years with stuff. And he actually pulled the plug on himself after week 8. Going into week 9, we were 6-2. And he said he was supposed to get surgery in a couple weeks or whatever it was, or maybe that, I can't remember, the upcoming week. And he had the opportunity to play in the week 9 game. And he said, I think we ought to start our Grant. Buchholz was our other quarterback. We ought to start Grant this week because we got to get ready for the playoffs. So from a personal perspective as a coach, I was like, hey, that's a really good thing. But then from a dad, I was like, all right, he got it. And I was very proud of it and very happy that he decided that and made that connection. But, the injury thing is difficult, but again, it goes back to the disappointment and failure. It's such a tremendous teacher, but it's also a tremendous teacher because it's very difficult to navigate. It's very hard, I try to sink a little bit of time into kids who are in that situation and try to maybe broach those conversations with them about the difficulties of, disappointment and failure and tragedy for that matter in some cases. And it's a great teacher if you know how to navigate it properly.
Yeah, that's good. That really is good. Continuing to think through your coaching and education as an educator, what's one of your hardest life lessons you had to learn as a coach or as a teacher?
Oh, man. So some people will never like you, man. Some people will never like you. Pleasers, your pleasers of the world will suffer. And I'm a pleaser. I get very heartbroken. So I double lose when we lose a game. Particularly a very significant game, I double lose. So what I mean by that is I obviously worked really hard and I have my own personal disappointment for losing a game inside of the perspective of losing a game. That's not a tragedy.
Right.
But, I have that disappointment of losing a game, but then I lose again because I have this very, very, very strong need to try to provide that win for our parents and our kids. And I'm sure you've often felt when you lose a game that you feel bad for the kids because you saw the work they put in, you saw the effort, and you fall short. And that's a hard one. That's a hard one to get over. Particularly if you're a pleaser and you go into coaching, which a lot of people who coach are. If you're a pleaser, you're going to suffer, and you just got to be able to manage it.
That's good.
Too, you have to, I saw, something recently when it comes to, so you have to be able to, let that go because it's, like I said, it's about perspective. If I give you a softball, and I tell you to hold it in your hand and you hold that softball in your hand for a minute, it's not a big deal. But if you hold it for 2 hours, you start to notice that softball in your hand. If you hold it for 2 days, it starts to become a major problem in your life. If you hold it if you have that thing in your hand for a month, it becomes a major issue. It's the same exact thing when it comes to losing a game, particularly losing a game for someone else. If you hold on to that for a minute, it's gonna, it's gonna get you. If you hold on to it for 2 months, it's gonna wreck you. So you got, like I said, you got to be able to find ways to manage them.
That's good. That reminds me, my grandfather, he adopted my sister and I. We were young, and he was my coach for basketball, t-ball, baseball, all the sports. And so one of the things he always taught us was about when we lose, you just gotta shake it off, right? Or if you make a mistake, particularly in basketball or any other sport, you just gotta move on, right? Next play, make it up on defense or whatever the case may be. Like, just to have that mentality of like, man, I messed up, but hey, it's not over yet. I can still got time to do the best I can. Right, attitude and efforts. I love that you point that out as far as like, you guys got to find a way to manage that. If you're a coach and you like, if you're a pleaser, in that case.
Yeah, and you tell me. I mean, I guess particularly with young people, getting them to try to change that mindset. It's a selfishness thing that they hang on to that for so long. It is for all of us. Whenever we have a shortcoming in our lives, the only reason we hang on to it is because of that selfishness, that individual desire. It goes back to that, the morality part of religion and Christ and Christianity, is that you hang on to stuff out of selfishness. You can't hang on to that stuff, man, because if it sticks around for too long, then it becomes your identity.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have that personal identity as a failure, obviously. And talking kids down, you tell me, talking kids down from that, how hard is that, man? How hard is it to talk an athlete down for making a mistake, bro? That's rough.
Yeah. They can find a way to not, like, we speak truth to them, not to offend them, but because we love them, right? Speak truth and love, and so it's tough, yeah. Mm-hmm. So they can wrap their minds around like, hey, I am showing you, I'm correcting you because I care about you. Okay, then we can move on and keep going, not just like hang your hat down and woe is me, all that stuff. So
because putting it away and getting rid of it and setting it down is not about you. It's about the 4 other people or the 10 other people, or however many else. It's for them. And it's the same thing as your family. If you got something, you make a mistake, say I bounce a check or whatever. Not that I know how to write checks, but I do something, I screw up, and I'm putting it on me. I'm hindering myself, and ultimately that's affecting the rest of my family, affecting my community, affecting my job. So yeah, it translates. Everything in sports translates, man.
Yeah, that's good. I want to segue into a different lane here. So you have your own podcast, Dave. And so tell us a little bit more about that. How did that come about, and how's that been for you?
You really want me to tell you about that? Because it's not. So I started it because as a tool. I'm not good at this. I understand I'm not a great speaker. My product's not the best ever, but so it originally started from an effort that I pursued a couple years ago, about 2.5 years ago, when it comes to the public and private school issue in high school athletics in the state of Michigan and really around the nation. There's a tremendous disparagement in the statistical success amongst private schools and public schools in the state of Michigan. Private schools win at a tremendously significantly higher level than public schools. I started kind of digging into the statistics and really doing some work on it, and found out, there's a negligence among the state organization and the MHSA to do anything about this, or even amidst the coaches associations, whether it be the MHSFCA or any of the other representative sports. So I tried to get the word out. I won't bore you with all the stuff that happened with it, but I tried to get the word out, tried to really push some awareness on this, and I got stonewalled quite a bit by the state organization and the football organization. So I decided I'm just gonna really get the word out to the public and people that aren't aware of this, and then get enough people talking about it that we're gonna maybe get some movement in the big thing was social media. I irritated a whole bunch of people at the state level and a whole bunch of people in the organization, the football organization. And I decided, you know what? I'm really super long winded and I need a podcast to explain all this stuff. So
Right.
I bring on some guests that, I steer off the path once in a while and I do some lighter stuff. I don't have a ton of episodes, and I'm not a professional podcaster. I'm not even really great at it. I hung sleeping bags. That's how professional I am. So I just try to use it as much as I can whenever I can get some material. Sometimes I got to work hard to get some material, just to kind of fill the gaps. I actually kind of like it. It's fun. It's more of a hobby type thing. Like I said, I'm getting a little bit better at it, but for the most part, I pretty much stink at it. But it's a good time and it serves a purpose. And I do get the information. It served its purpose in terms of I can get some information out there and people can listen to it as they please. And it's always available, even the older stuff. So it's fun. I like it.
Yeah.
It is called The Ball Coach, by the way, in case you want to listen.
The Ball Coach. If you haven't listened to it, hey, check it out. Won't be disappointed. So some good stuff there.
Thank you.
Yeah, good topics too. Thinking about, haven't really digested that, like private schools winning more than public schools. It's an interesting topic to keep digging into. So.
For anybody who doesn't have the statistics, and I'd be happy to send you, I have so many stats on that. I hand mined all the statistics myself. It took me months and months and months. If you ever want to look at them, I'd be happy to share them with you or anybody else who'd want to look at them, because the more info we can get out on it, the better.
Right.
I know the state of Alabama just recently switched over to a separate public and private school playoff system, just out of the blue kind of. And it kind of created a little bit of a ripple nationally. And I think the word is starting to get around in the state of Michigan, and there might be something on the horizon. Hopefully. We'll see.
Yeah. It's good.
And as a basketball coach, sorry to interrupt you, as a basketball coach,
you're fine.
Let me ask you a question. And it's going to put you on the spot because I did a podcast and I have this argument with a lot of guys on our coaching staff. My personal belief is a average to above average high school boys basketball team could beat a WNBA all-star team. So you're on the spot, coach. Who wins that game?
Man, so just to recap, you're saying average or above average boys
high school basketball
team could be a all-star WNBA team. Man, I haven't really thought about that. Man, that's tough. Yeah.
That's my cutoff. That's my line, is the average boys thing, because I think it'd be a 50-50. Now, if you take East Lansing or something like that, boys basketball team, I think that's a 40-point win. The boys basketball team beats them by 40. Your average team, I think that's probably the cutoff. Don't get yourself on a hook, coach. All right.
I was going to say, so WNBA All-Stars, we're talking at least Caitlin Clark and Paige and Angel Reese. Yeah. That's tough. That's a tough one. I gotta chew on that. So
good. Yeah, you're excused. You don't have to do it. Man.
That's good. Yeah. Anyone else, when you get a chance to watch or listen, feel free to share your feedback. What do you think? Who would win, an average or above average high school boys basketball team or a all-star WNBA team? That is, I'll be curious what the people think. Yeah, that's good.
People get a little bit dicey. They get a little testy when they start talking about that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, sports unites so many people, and it's so cool to have those conversations, barber talk shop, etc. But sports really can bring people together. So it was really cool. at least bring that question on the table. So that's pretty funny. So
Absolutely.
as we wrap up here, Dave, what's your encouragement for folks, particularly young people who are struggling or just trying to find some direction? What's your advice for them? How can you encourage those young people?
Don't get a tattoo. So, because, and that's not a commentary on tattoos. So let me explain.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with tattoos. Because the person that's putting that tattoo on their body is not going to be the same person carrying that tattoo tomorrow. And it has nothing to do with tattoos. So as a person, particularly a young person, anything you say and do right now, that person tomorrow doesn't have to carry that. It's not who you are, man. So, as you go through life, when you're making the mistakes and having the successes and having those experiences, encountering those people, because I try to tell our guys and the kids that I deal with in classrooms, I know the meaning of life. Here's the meaning of life. It's very easy. It's very easy. It's not about you, man. It's about everybody else around you. So you have a chance and an opportunity. And again, I tell the kids, there's two types of opportunities. There's the ones that fall in your lap, like the lottery and like the $10 bill you found on the ground. And then there's the other type of opportunity, and that's the one you create for yourself. Those are much more difficult, and they're the ones that are much more productive and beneficial. So, I try to tell our kids that when you're going through life and you're having these experiences and you're failing and you're succeeding and all of these things that you're doing, you're going to grow and develop naturally. You have to take advantage of those opportunities every single time that they fall in your lap, or every time you can create one. You have to take advantage of that. And by the time it's all said and done, you're not going to be the same person you were yesterday or the day before or the week before. And you're certainly not going to be the same person you were 15 or 20 years ago as you are now. And vice versa, you're not going to be the same person now that you were 15 years ago. So young people, that's a really hard concept to get them to believe that tomorrow is another day.
Right.
I don't use it as much. I used to use it a lot more in the classroom. Kids would come in and they'd have a bad day, or something went wrong, or they had a mishap, something bad happened, or even tragic, and I tell them, it's unfortunate, but, you got to get by that. But the truth is, today's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday, and you got to get to that point tomorrow where you're that other person. As a young person, it's hard. They see the world through 15 years. They don't see the world through 50 years. That 15 years, so many. It's such a year is a lifetime. Whereas when you're 55, a year is like, oh my gosh, I'll see you in 5 minutes. So it's trying to navigate that world of middle school, high school, adolescence, even when you get out of high school, that transition, understand that those mistakes and even the successes don't define you, because you could have it all work out your way and fall, all the cards fall in your favor. And ultimately, down the road, you have to understand that successes or failures, regardless, you're going to grow and develop and change, and you have all kinds of opportunities. So don't hang your hat on all of that stuff in the past. Just try to keep developing and growing and making things around you better for the people that you're responsible for.
That's good. That's good, Coach. Yeah. Thanks. That's good stuff. So, yeah.
It only took that one right there was a culmination of 35 years of doing this. So I had it all built up to that right there, man.
Right. That was awesome.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's right.
Time and place.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah,
what do you try to implement as a foundation for young people trying to get through just their experience in high school?
Yeah, good question. I would say one thing that comes to mind is, in particular to sports and coaching, athletes particularly, you can only play sports for so long. And so if you get injured, the biggest thing is teaching them life lessons. And you alluded to that with the things you're teaching in your focus freshman class, which is awesome. I think that's terrific. And so I think about like teaching young athletes, young players about life lessons and like, hey, let's be responsible. Let's be on time. You know the famous quote: if you're late, if you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time.
Yeah.
And you know, integrity and character and like attitude and effort is big. And so like, even if you basketball or whatever sport is taken away from you, what is still left? What's that foundation, right? And your character is still with you. And so if you get injured, you know, it's not the end of you, but you have a different journey to trek. And how will you respond to that?
It's funny you say that too, because I try to always find an avenue for implementing some type of biblical connection. And when you say that a kid has basketball when they're in high school and that'll go away eventually, that can be also said about just about anything that they have. It could be any success or what it may be. And if you look at it, isn't that Job? And, regardless of who he was prior to losing everything, his wealth, his family, his material items, everything, he never lost his faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all he needed. Even his friends were just like, hey, man.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you just take
do
a
it.
nap for a long time? Just turn the lights out. It'll be better that way. That's a much bigger scale, much grander scale. And when you winnow it down to, okay, you have this right now as a young person, it's not going to be around, man. So prep now.
Mm-hmm.
Your faith is going to take you much farther than everything else, regardless of whether it's basketball or anything else,
Right. That's good. Yep. Man. Hey, Laker country is blessed to have you as a coach, educator. And so I appreciate what you said at the beginning where you have your people. Your people, it could be your family, your community, the school, your young men, young athletes and people in your classroom. So Dave LeVasseur, thanks for jumping on here, and such a blessing to the Laker country and around the thumb too. So not just for them, but we appreciate your
that.
insights, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Coach. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, thanks for tuning into the Lean In Podcast with Coach LeVasseur. Stay tuned as they'll start their probably spring training and things like that later in the year.
Already into it, man. Already doing it.
Already on it. So what am I talking about? Yeah, he's been on it. So I'm a little late to the game. Yeah, thanks folks for checking out today's podcast. So, and we'll talk to you later.
Appreciate it. Thanks.